I just want to come on to celebrate the opening of college football Saturday, at least for the first full week anyway, by going back to Thursday. It started out with Florida going up to Utah, which is very rare for Florida to step outside their comfort zone. And I think it's a good thing that they stepped outside their comfort zone, and they should have been doing it a long time before. Had they been doing this all along, they would have an easier transition. Yeah, I know different teams, they change every year, but the mindset of Florida does not. If you don't know anything about Florida, let me tell you about the arrogantness of this program. If you recall, way back in 1979, they didn't win a game. Yeah, I know the way they act now is just impossible, right? Well, ever since then, they come up with that new scheduling thing where they will play you if they feel like they can beat you, but they're not going to take a risk to play you if they can't defeat you. And what they're doing, or what they did, was hide behind the SEC. And you know how powerful the SEC is. It's real powerful right now. And things go in circles. But they felt like, well, why take a risk outside the conference when we know how tough it is? And why schedule a team if we can't beat them, especially since we don't have to play them? Well, it was illustrated when they played Miami. They would beat Miami pretty regular, but once Miami started defeating them, then they started not to want to play Miami. They say you want to play a more national schedule. And that began in 1988 after Miami put 37-4, I believe it was. The Gators got two safeties. And they started in 88, they come up with, this national schedule and start playing small teams like Montana State. And what they do, they get some action with the players. Everybody gets a chance to play. The team makes a little bit of money, and it moves on from there. But just going back to that 87 game, that's the year that Emmitt Smith came in and took over, and he never gave it up. And you know the rest of the story with him. All right, I lost signal there for a second. But what I was trying to say was that 87 game when Florida switched up with their scheduling, that's the game that Emmitt Smith came in and took over and they never gave it up. And you know what happened to him throughout the rest of his playing career. But again, the thing that I wanted to point out about Florida going to Utah is going to be the future of college football. And if you watch that game, especially in comparison with the way that Nebraska and Minnesota, the atmosphere there was completely different. Florida going to Utah, yes, the fans want you to win. And when Utah came to Florida, yes, the Swamp really wanted them to win, but there was no real connection between the two programs. And you can tell in the Utah audience that, this is just something we hope our team wins. This is an anomaly. We'll probably never see the Gators come this way again. So let's just try to enjoy it. But the atmosphere was kind of like going to the movies. Not the kind of thing that you want for college football. So when you think about all this realignment that's taking place, this is what you're going to get when you start having this East Coast, West Coast, which brings up the ACC. As you know, as of yesterday, the ACC has voted to approve or to invite California, Stanford, and get this, SMU. SMU had nothing to do with the whole picture of this realignment. It was all about California and Stanford. They were turned down by the four schools. I knew Florida State, North Carolina, NC State, and I can't remember the fourth school. But all those other schools besides NC State stuck with their original vote, and NC State flipped, which allowed the acceptance of California, Stanford, and now again we got SMU. Why nobody wants Oregon State or Washington State is beyond me, but they will be a better football program than what you will have with SMU. Now, speaking of SMU, they don't really have a whole long history in modern times of being a winning program. Yes, they won in the 50s with Doak Walker. Yes, when Ron Meyer put together that team with Eric Dickerson and Craig James, and they had their little run there where they had some good football players there, but they pretty much got the death penalty. So it's a wonder that team is even still allowed to play. But having said that, I made the joke that SMU was going to be an instant doormat of the ACC. Well, not so fast. All the stuff that Ron Meyer and some of his recruiters were doing can be considered legal now, especially with NIL. So if you can legally find a way to get some players paid on the NIL, it's a lot of the same things they did when they built the program back when they had Eric Dickerson. So who's to say that the SMU program won't come back as strong as they used to be. Now, the only problem I got with SMU, you know the jokes people are making about you, and then on top of that, you go and sign a deal where you guarantee no media revenue for 9 years. Why would you do that? And also, they're making jokes about you. The only reason they really wanted you now because Dallas, where you're located, is a good layover spot. Why would you sign up to be in a conference like that? It doesn't make sense. But anyway, you're going to have the situation when you have Cal and Stanford doing a whole lot of tripping to the East Coast to play in this new conference. And I know a lot of lower level coaches, they won't say anything, but they don't really want to have any part of that. Now, just to give you an idea about what this may look like. Back in 2008 and 2009, California actually had a 2-year contract where they played against Maryland. Well, in the first game, Cal actually came across, and they had to play a 12 o'clock game, and it didn't go so well. It took them a good while before they finally got going, but they ended up losing like 37-25 or something like that. And you could tell that the layover or the time change from, that's basically saying you playing at 9 o'clock on California time, and they weren't ready to play. Then they came back the next year when Maryland went to Cal, completely different story. Now it was Maryland that had problems with the lag time and the layovers and trying to get used to the new time zone, and it showed. They got blown out something like 52-13. So this is the kind of thing you're going to see because, of course, if I know you got to come across country, especially if the California team, Stanford has to go to, say, North Carolina, they're going to schedule that game at a time that's at a disadvantage to Stanford. So look for that. And the final thing I want to talk about, you have Deion Sanders finally making his debut as the Colorado coach. He has been in the headlines all summer long, pretty much ever since he took over, because he said he was bringing his luggage. And by that, he meant that he was going to transform the whole roster. It wasn't that he was bringing his players from Jackson State. He was bringing all the players he can get his hands on. And he used the transfer portal legally to do so. Now, he's caught a lot of flack from a lot of different schools saying that what he did was not the way that college football should be. But I'm going to tell you something, and I've already told you this before. Everybody's looking at the way Deion did that, and they want to see what kind of results he gets. If this team is somewhat successful, and I think they will be, then you're going to see everybody else following the same model that Deion did. So the question I really have is, what kind of players did he come up with? Can these players compete? And I think they will do better than what you think they would, but I really want to see how his son, the quarterback, does. How does his style of play match up to this new Division I? He's used to Jackson State. Now, here's the advantage of playing for a team like Jackson State. In the HBCUs, they tend to play a lot of man-to-man coverage. In Division I, they tend to play zone. Now, with man-to-man, if nobody's open, if you can get through the line, you can get some decent yardage because everybody's got the back turned. But that's not the case when everybody's playing zone. They can see you, and they can pretty much match up with any kind of route that you put together. So it's going to be interesting to see how he comes out and matches up against TCU. Now, everybody wants to see how TCU bounced back from the national championship game. That's going to be a good question to ask. And I think they still got a lot of good talent there. They made some adjustments, and I think they're going to get over the embarrassment that we saw in the national championship game. It wasn't that they weren't qualified to be there. They were. It just, I think the lights were just a little bit too bright for them that night, and it didn't make no difference who Georgia played that night. Once they got by Ohio State, I think it was all over anyway. But today, I'm looking for a real good game from Deion. He's going to show you that what he's done is the future of college football. But no matter if he comes out and win the national championship this year or next year, he's done. I think the only reason he's doing this is because of his son. He said this is his calling. This is the thing he's been meant to do. This does not work for him. Well, he's got no real pressure, so I understand why he would say that. But in his heart, not being able to move around like Deion moves around and talk the trash that Deion talks, after his sons are gone, I think that's going to be the end of it. So it's pressure now for Deion, if nobody putting it on him but himself, for him to win right now. And I think he's going to show everybody something. And they're going to tee it up in about 10 minutes. and we're going to find out just what Colorado is going to look like in the very, very near future. So until then, enjoy some good football. We're going to start going live more, especially on Saturdays, and I'm looking forward to a good football season. This is Sports for Real. All right, how you turn this shit on?